down by the rail there. Look lively.
Who's coming? What's wrong?
Hush, Charlie. There's a press gang. They'll be looking for deserters. They need men for their war with France, you see. So the British, they claim some of their Navy men are now crewmen aboard American ships and take them back. It is called impressment, for they force, oppress our men into their service. The poor souls, they can never leave the British Navy unless they desert.
But we have no deserters here, do we?
It matters not. Who can stop them? They could take our whole ship, cargo, crew, and all.
Lieutenant?
Captain, we seek deserters. Here are their names.
I recognize none of these.
Surely they would use false names.
And if I refuse to allow you to search?
My ship's guns are run out, ready to fire. Or we could take your ship and the cargo, sail it to a British port, and have it subjected to a British prize court. Your ship is not armed at all, is it? Your name?
Jacob Jones,
Your home?
Marblehead, Massachusetts.
That's not a Cornwall accent, I'll be hanged. Take him.
What?
No! You'll only be taking yourself.
And that one.
No. He's no deserter.
Captain, I've discovered 3 deserters from His Majesty's Navy aboard your vessel. We shall repatriate these men. Good day.
These men are known to me. None of them are British.
If you disagree with my judgment, your government may submit a claim to the Royal Navy through our foreign minister.
They can't just take them.
Hush!
Every American ship faces the same problem every day. Pass a British warship, and if they want to search you, what can you do?
We should fight back with our own warships.
The United States has few of those. Britain has hundreds.
Do what you can for me, Captain!
You have my word.
Sir, what can we do?
We can write their families, if we know where to. Otherwise, 'tis a matter for our governments to sort out. Until then, all we can do is mind our business. The lumber and corn below decks must be delivered, or I'm a ruined man. So are all of you.
The British practice of imprisonment has continued for years. For years, gentlemen. Gentlemen, there is no other way but war with Britain.
Are you mad, Mr. Clay? The Embargo Act, this non-importation of goods from overseas, has destroyed our economy. In heaven's name, how could we fix that problem by going to war?
My colleague is right. Stopping Americans from trading with all foreign nations has not prevented Britain or France from treating the United States as some kind of colony, not an independent nation. But again, I say, Britain will understand nothing but war.
But why with Britain? If France is equally to blame, why not fight France?
Because, my dear sir, British troops occupy forts on our Northwest Territory. British troops and settlers stir Indians to war with Americans. But of course, you care nothing of this, living as you do on the coast. But I, sir, am from Kentucky. I know what our settlers suffer, under what fears they live, that they'll be attacked in their sleep, their hard-won farms burned around them.
Mr. Clay, you failed to explain how a war with the greatest military power on Earth, certainly the greatest power at sea, could possibly do anything but make the situation worse.
Hear, hear.
Now, there is this new Indian leader, Tecumseh. Now, this Tecumseh seeks to form an alliance of tribes from the Great Lakes to the Floridas, and Britain seeks to aid him. If he succeeds, mark my words, gentlemen, There shall be no more settlers in the Northwest, nor in the Southwest, nor in the South. Our nation shall be strangled. And are we to continue to tolerate these attacks on our national honor? Does Britain even recognize our independence? When British warships stop and strip our own ships and take what and whom they please. They cite their war with France as a cause. They need sailors to defeat Napoleon. But I ask you, how does this affect our nation? Why should Americans suffer because Britain and France cannot make peace? Why can Britain and France not treat the United States as their equal? No, I tell you, gentlemen, the only solution, the only way, is to invade British Canada at once.
Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay. Mr. Clay! Why should we invade Canada? Their people have never offended us. This smacks of nothing more than a greedy land grab. If your real complaint is against the British, then fight the British. And how much do you suppose that a land war against the British in Canada should cost us? You refuse to spend money to build an American Navy to protect New England shipping. Yet you believe that this is the right path.
Who needs a standing army or navy to conquer Canada? Do you forget, my colleague of New England, how our militia won our independence from Britain? No, we need only 500 Kentucky riflemen to conquer all of Canada.
The debate about war had gone on for years. At last, in 1812, the Senate approved a House bill declaring war against Britain. It was very close. Only 19 for and 13 against. Very close indeed. Northerners mostly opposed the war because shipping and trade was the basis for their economy. Southerners mostly supported it because people in that region relied on farming and very little on foreign trade. But in the West, my West, people wanted the Indians' land, thought that the British officials in Canada were helping Indians fight white settlers. So in the West, the cry was all for war. President James Madison signed the bill into law on June 17, 1812.
If the Treaty of Fort Wayne is removed, I will be a good friend. You must promise in the future to meet with all the tribes, not just one or two leaders. You cannot expect tribes to give up lands that they share with others.
You do not want chiefs to sell your country. You must take it up with those chiefs, not with us.
Sell a country? Why not sell the air, the great sea, as well as the earth? Did not the Master of Life make them all for the use of his children? How can we have confidence in the white people?
Brother Tecumseh, you must understand that the Fort Wayne Treaty is completed. It's finished.
It does not have to be so. You should heed my voice. I am alone the acknowledged leader of all the nations.
I can send your concerns to the president in Washington, but a new treaty would not be any better for your people.
Britain will not push us off our land as you Americans have.
They will abandon you, just as they abandoned your people after the Battle of Fallen Timbers 20 years ago.
I am not deceived by the British. They want the Indian only to fight their wars. As if we are their dogs. I do not wish it, but I believe that I will be forced to fight the Americans.
Forced? You are free to avoid war.
You Americans push my people away. And push until we will have no more land left to live. You must be satisfied with the land that you had before the treaty.
All I can promise is to send your concerns to the president in Washington.
Well, as the president must decide, I hope the Master of Life puts sense into his head. The president is far away. He will not be injured by war. He will sit in his town and drink his wine while you and I here must fight it out.
Is that a threat?
This is the way things must be.
Now, August 1814 is the darkest hour for the United States. We thought the war would be over in 6 months. We could have conquered all of Canada if we'd had the right generals. Brilliant victories at sea, and yet, well, all that is past. Tecumseh is dead. He was killed in battle, fighting with the British against William Henry Harrison. And Andrew Jackson, that hero of Tennessee, He hates me, by the way. Defeated Tecumseh's allies, Red Stick Creeks at Horseshoe Bend, just a few months ago. Now Britain has won its epic war with France and defeated Napoleon. Now Britain turns its full attention to us. Britain's blockade has long devastated our commerce, especially in New England, just as the opponents of the war predicted. And now, there's a British force in the Chesapeake Bay. It has burned Washington, our capital, and now is poised to strike at the very heart of the nation, the port of Baltimore. There's no telling what damage they will do if they achieve victory here. It may well be the end of the Union.
Ah, our soon-to-be former prisoners.
General, sir, I thank you for your mercy on behalf of my good friend, Dr. Beans.
If it were not for Dr. Bean's treatment of the British wounded from the Battle of Washington, Mr. Key, there would be no reason to thank me. It is we who are grateful to him.
All the same, General, I do appreciate your releasing me.
Yes. Unfortunately, I am not able to allow either of you to leave at this time.
But...
Do you see yonder fort?
Fort McHenry? Aye. What has that to do with our release?
I cannot risk that either of you will warn the city or the fort that we are about to attack. You may not leave until the fort has fallen and our forces control the port of Baltimore.
General, sir.
This is not negotiable. I give you my word that you shall be safely released as soon as the fight has ended. Good day, gentlemen.
Tis certain. If the British take the fort, this will be the last battle of the war.
Aye. I think it will. With our capital ravaged and burned, now Baltimore, in the very heart of our nation, should it be conquered?
'Twould be the end of the United States itself. I will say, I hadn't thought I'd live to see such a defeat by the British yet again. Can you see?
Perhaps. Nay.
Can it be?
Beans. Dr. Beans. Beans! Wake up!
What is it? Are we captured?
Can you see? It's the dawn. Can you see?
The flag is still there. Do you see? By Jove, 'tis still there. The fort is ours. Francis, what are you writing?
A poem to mark this glorious occasion.
Say, can you see?
By the dawn's early light.
A great victory at last was Fort McHenry in Baltimore Harbor. And not only did the British leave the Chesapeake Bay entirely, but U.S. forces drove back the British and Canadians on Lake Champlain in New York. Glorious indeed. But our war is still far from over. For when Napoleon is subdued, Britain will send its battle-hardened veterans to fight in America. Will our militia stand up to them? Can they?
Mr. President, my colleagues from New England and I demand that you accept whatever terms the British offer. We must end this war immediately, or I must warn you, New England will not stand for such treatment.
I thank you kindly for your suggestions and promise to consider them most carefully.
I warn you, sir, we shall be heard. Gentlemen.
Gentlemen, Admiral Cochrane is on his way to the great port cities of the Gulf of Mexico, Mobile, Alabama, New Orleans. He brings a British fleet, well over 10,000 men.
I am aware, Mr. President.
We must reach a treaty to end this war as soon as possible.
Mr. President, what are your instructions? On what matters are we allowed to negotiate?
As you know, Britain has agreed that you will meet in Belgium, so that you are not at a disadvantage negotiating in England. Once you arrive in Belgium, you have full powers to negotiate a treaty. You need not. Nay, you cannot wait for instructions from Washington.
Are there any points on which we must not give in to British demands?
Yes. You must appear to stand firm against the impressment of American sailors.
Appear to stand firm?
Britain's war with France is over. Therefore, the British have little need any longer to impress sailors from American ships.
But as a cause of the war, surely we should not give in on this point.
On the contrary, Mr. Clay, we are willing to give way on this point precisely because Britain no longer needs to impress our sailors. But do not give way too easily. You should use the point to gain something from them on other matters.
In what of the British causing conflicts between the Americans and Indians on the frontier, Mr. President? This was another cause of the war. Are we to give way on this point as well?
General Jackson, thank God you've come in time.
Well, at least someone's glad to see us. Amen. I understand there's some pirates around these parts.
Yes. Jean Lafitte has offered $5,000 for my capture. I've sent the Commodore to defeat him.
Defeat him? Governor, I mean to enlist him. Jean Lafitte has some 2,000 men under his command. And surely they know the coastline, otherwise they wouldn't be very good pirates now, would they?
That is a preposterous notion. He's a criminal, a cutthroat.
Governor, my men are not enough, and your militia are in a frightful state. Now, you have some free blacks in the city, some Choctaw Indians, some Spaniards and Frenchmen, too.
Of course, but they won't fight.
Oh, nonsense. None of them have any love for the British. Who among us does? By gum, they'll stand, and I can make them fight. After all, we're all Americans, are we not?
Now, see here, Mr. Jackson.
Governor, there is a force of 10, even 20,000 British soldiers and sailors, an entire fleet, a city of them, out there in the Gulf just waiting to land. Upwards of 2,000 already landed, on their way here right now to burn this city as they did Washington.
Yes, of course, I know that.
By the eternal, they shall not sleep on our soil. We will drive our enemies into the sea, or we will die trying. And I need every man. Do you understand me? Every man. Very well. You, have yourself a Merry Christmas, Governor. We will be about our business of building a defensive line to stop the invader.
Gentlemen, let us review. Item 1. Our two nations will cease hostilities, promising to discuss our disagreements at a future date.
And that includes impressment.
As we have discussed, that is correct.
And that Britain
must give way on our right to expand westward.
Yes, gentlemen. We will discuss that at a future date.
In item 2, our two nations will maintain status quo antebellum, meaning the exact situation as before the war. No changes to territories or policies.
Correct.
Then, gentlemen, it appears we have our peace. You know, Americans might well ask what they've gotten from this war.
They might well ask, Mr. Adams.
And what would you reply, Mr. Clay?
That we have become a nation. In fact, not just a name. There's now no European power that will interfere with the United States. We're no longer a pawn in their games.
Mr. President, General Jackson has defeated the British Navy and Army at New Orleans.
Indeed. That is most welcome news.
My colleagues opposing the war will be most amazed.
Up and down. And Edwards.
General Jackson, I presume?
Don't forget those supplies. Yes?
I come from Admiral Sir Alexander Cochrane. He sends his greetings and this news from London.
Is this some kind of joke?
I assure you, it is not, sir.
Well then, the Admiral sends his congratulations on our winning the war. Seems they signed that peace treaty in Europe. Christmas Eve, in fact. 6-7 weeks ago, this treaty was signed 2 weeks before we fought here. Are these dates correct?
They are, sir. The news took some time to reach North America. Do you have a return message?
Nary a thing, but, thanks for the news, young man. Johnny, write this man out a pass for safe travel back to his command.
I thank you, General.
There shall be a firm and universal peace between His Britannic Majesty and the United States. All hostilities, both by sea and land, shall cease as soon as this treaty shall have been ratified. Edwards, tell the commanders to keep up the defense until it is certain the Admiral has vacated this coast, both here and at Mobile. No telling how long it will take Congress to ratify this treaty.
The war lasted more than 2 years and killed more than 2,000 Americans. The United States would give up trying to conquer Canada, but it did, thanks to Andrew Jackson's efforts, acquire Florida from Spain. The death of Tecumseh did not mean the end of Indian resistance to white settlement, but it destroyed the power of the tribes in the Northwest and the South. But perhaps the biggest result of the War of 1812 was that the United States became truly independent of the influence of Britain and truly united.